This is a new review, but the episode is still just as awful as it was before. Some of the content shown here is offensive, to say the least. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. So, why am I doing another review of this one? Well, for one thing, my old review is twice as long as the actual episode. Not only was the pacing of my original review horribly slow, but one of the main problems with the episode itself is slow pacing. In retrospect, this makes me feel like a bit of a hypocrite. I wouldn't be upset about this if it wasn't for how poorly I presented information. Even with the amount of time I took, many of my opinions became muddled. The review became sidetracked with trying to critique SpongeBob as a whole, and as a result, my anger was directed at the whole series instead of at the episode. I am not angry at SpongeBob as a whole. I'm disappointed in how it's gone from a great show to an awful show. It's this episode that I'm angry at. And then there was me speculating about the intention of the writers, which I messed up too badly for me to explain quickly. Okay, enough bashing myself. I'm here to bash Are You Happy Now today, and this time I'm doing it right. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab, where we immediately get a failure of a joke. They have a guy talk about fine dining, and then show someone doing something uncivilized. This is literally the most obvious joke which can be made in this situation. All this does is waste time, and set the stage for a variety of other failed jokes. Speaking of wasting time, the next gag is SpongeBob laughing annoyingly for nearly 30 seconds. Now, a situation like this can be funny, but only if another character were to react in a funny way and the focus were on that. The focus here, however, is on SpongeBob's laugh, which is annoying, not funny. We see Squidward react to it a bit, but it's not the focus, and his reaction isn't funny either. It's the exact response the audience is having. See, according to this episode, if the joke is at Squidward's expense, then it has to be funny, no matter how cruel it gets. And trust me, it gets pretty damn cruel. After a whole bunch of nothing, SpongeBob asks Squidward what his happiest memory is. He can't think of one, and SpongeBob is concerned. Now, to say Squidward has never had a happy memory is far-fetched on its own. It's a whole other level of unbelievable to say he's never had a memory which was even slightly more tolerable than his normal misfortune. But that's what they do here.
How can you live without a happiest memory? Do you cry yourself to sleep at night?
Thanks for being condescending to someone with depression, SpongeBob. It sounds like you don't care. Actually, it sounds like Tom Kenny doesn't care. His voice work here is competent, but he's certainly putting in less energy than necessary for what is supposed to be the epitome of an energetic character. And yes, Squidward does basically have clinical depression in this episode. Speaking of him, his voice actor Roger Bumpus really phoned it in here.
This is not my happiest memory. I might as well go to bed for 100 years or so. One Krabby Patty, extra grease.
90% of every line he delivered in this episode is the same wooden inflection. How could this get any more annoying?
I'll wait.
Well, I spoke too soon. Well, at least SpongeBob decides that he wants to help Squidward make a happiest memory. It only took us a quarter of the episode, but we finally have a plot point! Yay! I hope you've enjoyed it, because the plot doesn't move again until we're over halfway through. This episode is great at wasting time. The next few minutes consist of dragged out, unfunny jokes at Squidward's expense. SpongeBob takes Squidward to a concert, but a violin bow jabs him in the eye. It's actually the most poorly executed piece of slapstick that I have ever seen. It's too weak because Squidward's only reaction is staring blankly. It's too harsh because Squidward gets injured in a very sensitive area in a relatable way, so we feel his pain. SpongeBob takes Squidward to an art museum where we see one of Squidward's sculptures. Squidward has no idea how it got there, probably because they had another artist come in and burn the sculpture. They had his sculpture on display specifically to destroy it. In what reality is this sadistic trite intended to be funny? SpongeBob takes Squidward on a hot air balloon, but Squidward is afraid of heights, so SpongeBob causes the balloon to crash via being an idiot. They crash into a mountain, and after a few terrible jokes, one of which involves Squidward being stabbed in the foot, they are both swept off the mountain by an avalanche and end up at their houses.
Time to face facts. I'll never have a happiest memory. And if I do, it definitely won't involve you.
The episode plays Squidward giving up on finding a happiest memory as being serious. I wouldn't have any issue with this, but Squidward's depression has been treated as inherently humorous throughout the rest of the episode. Based on this scene, whoever made this clearly knows depression is a serious issue. Why the hell have they been treating this subject with such a disgusting lack of tact? Whatever. We have our second plot point and we have less than half the episode left until the end. Let's just finish this. Most of the rest of the episode is a whole bunch of nothing. It's just Squidward being depressed while SpongeBob tries to get his attention by being condescending. Yeah, I know some people found SpongeBob's behavior in this episode to be genuine, but it's not genuine. He continuously ignores how Squidward wants to be left alone, despite being clearly receptive to Squidward's feelings. He acts like he knows Squidward's emotions better than Squidward, and essentially treats Squidward like an idiot. I can tell you from personal experience that this is one of the most harmful ways of acting towards a depressed person. It's at this point when we get to the most infamous parts of this episode. The 2 suicide jokes. Squidward sticks his head in an oven, but then pulls out a platter of burnt brownies. Squidward hangs some rope from the ceiling, but he's only hanging up a birdcage, which then falls on his head. Sometimes, when heavy concepts appear in a children's show, it's clear they were approved because the writers had the skill to do them properly. Here, the writers did such a poor job that I wonder how it was approved for anyone! The first time this show attempted to deal with the issues of depression and suicide, in the episode One Course Meal, there was a huge backlash. Everyone on the show staff knew, or at least should have known, that they did a terrible job on that episode. One would expect them to put some effort into not being insulting when dealing with this issue again. I guess not, though, because there is no effort put into these 2 gags. For jokes like these to work, it must be clear that the character isn't actually suicidal. If this isn't done, then it comes across as making fun of a depressed person for being depressed. But that's what the episode has done, and has been doing the whole time. It makes fun of a depressed person for being depressed. Perhaps I find this more personally insulting than most people, due to my own experiences with depression, but this is a serious issue, and it needs to be treated with respect. I'm not saying one can't deal with it in a humorous way, but it's insulting and quite frankly disgusting to just make fun of it like this. Eventually, SpongeBob sneaks into Squidward's house, kidnaps him, and takes him to a party at the Krusty Krab. No one else showed up to the party because the world hates Squidward, so SpongeBob made a bunch of papier-mâché mannequins of himself to serve as guests.
I use my papier-mâché skills to fill the party with your favorite person, me!
Normally, SpongeBob is an idiot, and thus has an excuse to not realize Squidward hates him. In this episode, however, he's not only been receptive to Squidward's feelings, but Squidward made it very clear to him that he wasn't helping in the slightest. He has no reason not to know he's so far only made the situation worse. It's bad enough when everything he does has a negative effect. It's even worse when he has every reason to know he's hurting the situation, and yet continues his harmful behavior. My point here is that I see no way in which SpongeBob's behavior can be considered genuine. But hey, the party does cheer Squidward up, and by cheer up, I mean send into a manic state. He tears up all the mannequins and declares it to be his happiest memory. Because apparently, the best way for someone to get over depression is to pretend to murder someone. Ha ha, I'm done with this episode! This thing is an atrocious, reprehensible piece of garbage. It feels like the whole episode was trying to fall back on being as cruel as possible to a depressed character, as if that would be offensive enough to give it some sort of merit. It's offensive, alright, but that's not a good thing here. It's just uncomfortable. Even if you can get past this, there isn't a single element that works. The jokes range from lazy to incompetent to insulting, the plot barely moves for most of the episode, and the technical aspects don't attempt to provide any positive identity. It's the culmination of everything wrong with bad modern SpongeBob episodes. Slow pacing, unfunny jokes, inexcusably sadistic situations, flat characters, and a complete disregard for any form of taste. This is one of my least favorite cartoon episodes ever. I give it 0 out of 4 stars, a rating which I reserve only for the worst, most callous episodes I've ever seen. I truly think it is that bad.